Okay, so Kate from Yarnit.com got in touch and asked if she could send me a Yarnit to review for you guys. It is a product that is made in the USA, so I think it's probably mostly aimed at my USA viewers, possibly Canadian viewers, just because the cost of shipping will probably make something like this. I think the shipping would be relatively a bit much, potentially, for overseas customers. However, I'm sure Kate would be very happy for you to investigate that and to purchase one if it takes your fancy, because I think it is quite fun looking. It reminds me of a snow globe. But with yarn! Yay! Snow globe, obviously festive right now. In case you're watching this at some point in the future, it is December. Right now I am not crazy. It is December. It's very early in December, but hey. So, in essence, it is a yarn bowl. However, it has some cool little features. That means it also acts as a needle protector, a notions case, and a project bag. Not bad, right? So, the basic idea, obviously, is that we've got yarn, and it goes in here, and lock it up, and then the yarn, ching ching ching, gets pulled out for knitting on. In that way, super simple. The inside is plastic and really smooth, so nothing gets tangled or anything. It's nicely designed so that when I close it, there aren't any edges really for things to catch on and what have you. With my very thin yarn, when I was holding it at an angle, I did manage to sort of slightly, this is fingering, snag it like that. But that took some effort, yeah? And if you just have the hole pointing towards you, it's not going to do that. And if it does do that, you saw it's very easy. I just slid it back, no problems. And actually, when I'm putting it on, you can see that even with sort of double-stranded Aran weight, it's not focusing on the ball knit, there we go. It fits through halfway, so it's not like I'm snagging the yarn when I'm turning it to lock it. It is just a twist to lock mechanism, so it's dead simple. I would like it if the mechanism felt like it locked just a little more snugly. It's not a big problem. However, when it is potentially an issue is when I use it with its strap, which I'll show you in a second, and then I'll show you why. The other thing it does have is a nice rubber base. This does come off. It grips quite well, so it's quite strong to pull it off, but it does come with the little tag there with Yarnit written on. So if you needed to use that to pull it off, you can do. So, you know, not a problem for people with dexterity issues really. It does have a grip on the handle there, you can see. And the idea is then that in that little section there, or in you would store some bits and pieces. Now, I did manage to get 8 dangly stitch markers in here, but to do that, I really did have to arrange them carefully and what have you. And anything much smaller than that, say for example a darning needle, or a smaller marker, like sometimes I use just normal safety pins, could potentially fall out, yeah? Because the holes for the strap go in there. So the space is a little bit limited. It can't be too small to go in there, and it can't be too big. So I would say something like a few, I'll leave it down there, a few stitches, no I won't because my cat's around. Oh, dear me. Make your mind up, James, make your mind up. There we go. A few, I've pulled on the yarn now, it's all over the place. A few stitch markers, the dangly kind or something like that, might fit, but something like a tape measure I think would be too big. The strap I found I couldn't really get in there, that was a bit too big, and something much smaller than a dangly stitch marker and it might fall out of the hole. Now obviously when you've got the rubber base on, it does protect from that somewhat. Get to focus on that there, you can see the little hole down there is somewhat covered as opposed to without the base on, where you can see the hole there is a bit more exposed. But, you know, it's one of those things where I'm just like, I'm being super cautious about, would it work, would it not? So, yes, the strap is the other thing that can go with this. It's a pretty straightforward strap. Feels like it's just a sort of nylon cord. It's the kind of thing that I would expect to see on like backpacks and what have you. So it's super, super strong. And you just thread it through those holes I just showed you, like so. And then on one end is, if I can get it in front of my hand, there we go, a D-ring, a 2D ring clasp. So it's like one of those old school satchels or what have you that I used to have as a kid. But it makes it dead easy to tie up, lock in place. That will hold now. I'm not pulling it apart. And then you can wear it. So you could be on the move and what have you. You could have it under your jumper, or you could just have it on the strap to sit with you on your lap, so it doesn't suddenly roll off somewhere. So if you're on the bus, that would work. Or she does say in her literature, Kate mentions that if it's somebody who's infirm, for whatever reason, then it would potentially stop their yarn from running away with them or getting knocked over when they're trying to work with it. So that's quite good. So as I said earlier, the lock isn't super grippy, and sometimes I was worried that would mean that whilst I was walking along with it, if you imagine me jogging along or whatever with it like here, over time that it might start to rub, and if it did, that might start to come undone. Now I really had to force it then, but not strength wise. I just had to encourage the movement with my hand, because obviously I'm trying to do this super quick in the review. I haven't worn it to walk with, so this is a hypothetical. I've not had this happen to me. Again, it's about kind of really being aware of how the product's put together when I'm showing it to you guys, because I want to be thorough. I don't want to be effectively recommending a product by having it on my podcast. I'm not giving the pros and the cons. So for that reason, I'm a little bit wary about using it as a carry project bag. But if I was stood still or sat still, that would be fine. But I think if I was walking around and knitting, and I know some people do that, then I would be worried. That's the only reason I mention it. I can't do that. I can't walk and knit at the same time. That's far too coordinated. I can barely manage to knit and talk on my podcast, so that's not really going to be a problem for me ever. It's a big hypothetical. The other reason for it is aesthetic, that I would like it to lock a little bit. Not in the visual sense, but in the textural sense, which obviously as a knitter, texture is something that's really important to me. And there's something very satisfying about when something clicks together and you feel it kind of just grip itself. And that doesn't quite happen. And that's just like, it'd be so lovely if it did. But it works. So, you know, that is just me wanting this to be the perfect yarn ball. I would probably therefore take the strap off if I wasn't carrying it, because the strap could potentially start pulling on the rubber base if it gets pulled or what have you, and then that means the base is coming off. Or, quite frankly, my cat would love to play with this. He loves to play with the handles on bags, so that would be just the same. So I would say, you know, I'd need to take it off when I'm not travelling with it. And then the question for me with this becomes where to store it. Just because if I then try and sort of curl it up, well, for one, it's not the quickest mechanism to do, but I'll give it, just sort of go through and do it. Try and be fairly conscientious in doing it well, and try and fit it in here. Now, because it's a sphere, if I, now you can see I've had to really carefully wind it in and make sure the metal end is at one side. If it's in the middle, it's too big because this sphere continues, if I show you again, I'll just take that in a second, the sphere continues up into that area. So you can't really store anything in the centre part because it's too small, and anything that small would fall out. You know, I might be able to put a small stitch marker in there now that that's in the way. And if I put it on there now, then it's stored away in there. A little bit fiddly, but I can at least store it away, so that's good. The only other things I can think of that are worth mentioning, this stuff is super tough. It's said in the literature it's made out of, let me just double check again for you. Oh, wrong piece of paper, excuse me one moment. It's made out of Lexan, which is the same material that safety glasses are made from. So I have done with this, mind your ears a second. Oh, it landed on something soft. Let's try that again. I've done this a lot. There we go. And again. Poor Stitch down there in the corner is going, what are you doing? It's absolutely fine. This thing is one tough little ball. It does not mind being dropped on its head. It's not scratched, cracked or dented. Well, there are a few ever so slight scratches to it. But my friends were hitting this with a metal ruler the other day when I told them it's indestructible! And they managed to ever so slightly scratch it. So this thing is really, really tough. It will withstand. It's also going to be good against things like dirt and moisture. For the yarn itself, obviously once you start to pull the yarn out, not so much, yeah? But this, if you imagine it's on a table and you spill some water or something, that's going to be absolutely fine. Obviously if you drop it in a puddle and it goes sort of that way down, it has got holes in it. Or if it rolls and your yarn goes in, your yarn's gone in the water. But, you know, if you have a cousin that spits a lot, then when they talk, then you're safe if you're using this. I'm sorry, that's kind of a gross image. What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh yes, one of the big reasons Kate created this, in fact, was because of her pets. I can't forget that feature, and I do have two little cats, and Stitch, bless his little heart, who is now curled up but eyeing me suspiciously. You're going to drop that on the floor again, he's saying, because that was annoying. You know, cats that go for balls of yarn, or little dogs that want to play with the yarn. Once it's out again, not so safe, but if I have this close to me and I'm knitting, rather than it being this long length, I can have it sort of close by, for example even on the strap, and then I've no problems. If my cat comes up, it's going to have to come right up here to get hold of the yarn, and I can be like shoo shoo, you know. But even that is off-putting enough because they don't quite know and they can't get at the thing that's moving around, which is what really attracts their attention. So then they get bored and walk away. So it works! Kitty tested. Although obviously once the yarn's out, it's out. The Yarnit can only do so much, darn it. Ha ha ha, a little pun for you there. And yeah. Oh yes, I knew there was one other thing. I was thinking, I can't remember what it is. The slots on the top. The idea here is if you were knitting up with something, you could put your needles then in, poke them into your yarn. It will take up to, well, I tested with my needles, so they're UK needles, so it's a 7mm went in okay and 8mm didn't, but I checked, and for conversion purposes, an 8mm is a US 11. So less than a US 11 should be fine. Sort of a 10.5 would be fine because that's smaller than 7mm. I think that's 6.5. There's a bit of a jump there. But obviously, if you had something that was 7 or 7.5, you know, you'd have to try. But well, a 7 would be fine. That's these. That's my 7mm needles. They go in, no worries. They have a little bit of wobble room. I don't have a 7.5 to test it with, and my 8s wouldn't go in. So that's US 11. So obviously, if I've then got some knitting up on my needles here, this acts also as a stitch keeper or a needle protector. You can think of it in those terms, so the stitches aren't going to fall off my needles in my project bag, and also it stops my needles from potentially getting dog chewed, which was something that Kate said that she'd been affected by, which is again why she designed this. My DP ends obviously less protected. But hey ho, you can't have everything, right? And I think that is it. I'll just double check there's nothing else. It comes with some lovely instructions. It's dead simple. You twist the plastic together, you put the strap through. You've seen me do that. Really, really straightforward. Oh yeah, she mentions about because the yarn's spinning freely, it gives an even tension. And that's certainly true when you're pulling from the outside of a ball, which I'm doing here. I normally wind centre pull cakes. So what I did was I pulled from both ends and then wound a quick bit around my cake so you could see that in action. But the other thing that I have used it for, actually, you can see how easily it just spins round, is to pull from both ends of the ball. Now if I pull them from the same hole, I think that eventually it might start to twist up on itself. So what I tried was pulling from 2 separate holes, because this does actually have 3 holes that you can pull the yarn out of. So I pulled like that. Even like that, I did get a slight amount of tangling from pulling from both ends of the ball, but nowhere near as much as I would even if my cake was sat next to me rather than a centre pull ball, rather than an outside ball, which you can't do this with. And I've not tried it with both coming from the same hole, which would be interesting. I had a pattern that required me to hold my yarn double after holding it singly, so I hadn't wound it up double, and I just pulled it from both ends, and it worked beautifully with this. Much, much easier to work with, and it just da 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 da. I'm going to have to cake this up again at the end, aren't I? I hope I don't get it too tangled. So yeah, it will sort of keep a nice even flow with your yarn. Also potentially reduced my, well, it's called yarn bath, isn't it? I'm sorry, it's not the nicest term. But with a centre pull ball, sometimes the centre snags and you get a whole bunch of it come out. Well, it can't really do that with here because you've not got enough room before it catches. And you start to just it sort of holds that bath back so you can pull on your single thread still. So occasionally I had maybe 1 loop come through, but not like a whole great big chunk which you're then having to fiddle with. I didn't have that happen at all when I was knitting on it. Now I was using fingering weights because I was knitting on my latest shawl. This is Aran, if I haven't mentioned that already, so it fits double-stranded Aran. It's supposed to fit about 100 grams of a medium weight yarn. 50 grams Aran takes up about half of it. So I would expect 100 grams of Aran even to be able to fit in that. I don't know, it might be snug, but it would fit. So you'd be absolutely fine. I don't think you'd get 100 grams of super chunky or something in there. That's more like one of these are at the back here. Is this 100 grams or 200? Oh, this is 200 grams of super chunky. So that's not quite going to fit. But 100 grams or something more sensible would be fine. Obviously the other limitation is it's sort of 1 ball of yarn. So if you were doing colour work you might want 2 of these. Unless you were doing, oh what's it called, like bobbins of them. Yeah, so if you had a small amount of each for something like intarsia, you've got 3 holes so you can have your colours coming out of separate ones. That would work for that as well. I haven't tested it for that though, and that's just an idea I've had as I'm talking to you guys. So yeah, a couple of other things just to double check. The base comes off nice and easily. I have got this a couple of times now, so I'm not 100% certain how much I've said in this one. It's got a little handle, so you can grip it that way, so it's fairly straightforward to pull off. It does grip it quite well, so you need a bit of strength. You might struggle if you were infirm, but in that case you just might not use that feature particularly. But once you do take it off, apparently this base part fits in most standard cup holders. Now I don't know if that's different from the US to the UK, so I haven't tested it here. Because I don't think it would be particularly informative, but it claims that it will fit in your cup holder, so you can be knitting in the car and have it sat in there, which I think is pretty cool. I quite like the idea of having it there as I'm knitting along and seeing my yarn bobbing around in here and not getting lost or going around my feet or getting tangled up. For car knitting, genius, right? Genius. And because it's plastic, not like a pottery yarn bowl, you're not going to knock it with your knee and break it. There's some beautiful pottery yarn bowls, and I've even seen some that you can paint for yourself, and I want to get some of those. But you do it in a workshop, and then they glaze it for you. And it's gorgeous stuff. I've shown some of that work I did in my first episode. I think it was my first, one of my earlier ones anyway. Maybe my second or third. Oh dear, I've got a lot of yarn here, haven't I? Just try and pick this up and put it out of the way. Sort that out later. But yeah, so it's really nice and robust. It's hard wearing. It's not going to break. It doesn't really scratch very easily. It's pretty cool, actually. It's pretty funky. It came in a nice little box with tissue paper. The added bonus is that the base also smells slightly of strawberry flavouring. I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but it does. So this one's also strawberry scented. So yeah, you can check it out on yarnit.com, and you have a choice of plastic colours and base colours. There's some different combos on the site you can check out. I would aim this more towards US viewers just because of shipping costs. I don't know what it would be shipping costs internationally, so I'm not entirely sure if Kate is shipping internationally as a result of that, or if she's just not going to do that. But you can check out on the website and get in touch if you're desperate for one, and I'm sure she'll be happy to work that out and post it off to you. I say that, it's up to Kate obviously. I don't want to put words in her mouth, as I do with so many other people on my podcast. And yes, and I can't remember what the actual price is. I think it's something like $30. It might be a bit more than that. US. But obviously go and have a look and see what you think. See if there's a colour combo you like. But if you have pets that drive you up the wall by grabbing your yarn, or any of those other scenarios that I've mentioned, or you just want a cool space age yarn bowl, or you want something to show off to people and go, what do you reckon this is? Or you want a yarn bowl that can double as a snack bowl. Why not, hey? It could even double as a child's bath time play toy with all the holes in it. Right, I think that is enough of a review. I shall get you back to the podcast now. Thanks very much, Kate, for getting in touch. If anyone else wants to send me stuff to review, feel free.